views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Good day and welcome to Ability Radio, brought to you by the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. I am Angus Drago. I'm your host today. And today we are very fortunate to have Mr. Terrell Alexandre. He is the Deputy Supervisor of Elections on St. Croix. Before we get to Mr. Alexandre, just some housekeeping things. The Disability Rights Center advocates for individuals with disability, ensuring that their rights are not violated and that there's no neglect and abuse. And we do that by having a lot of outreach events. We do a lot of legal advocacy work. We also function as a parent center for children with disabilities and their families. Our offices are at Havenside in St. Thomas, and on St. Croix, we are west of the old KMAT West, and our number is 772-1200. Before I go to Mr. Alexandre, we have an event that's coming up on August the 12th and the 13th. On the 12th, it's going to be on St. Croix, and the 13th on St. Thomas. And that event is a voter registration and an election machine demonstration. So you can come by and learn how to use the machines. On St. Croix, we'll be accompanied by the AARP and the VI Diabetes Office of Excellence. On St. Thomas, they are also going to be appearing with us at the Tutupac Mall. And the event is at the same time from 8 to 4 p.m. I just want to start off with one piece of statistic, and that's for the individuals with disability out there. You have an extremely loud voice. 1 in 5 voters are individuals with disability, so you can actually make your voice heard this election. So without further ado, I would like Mr. Alexandre to introduce himself, and then we will get into a little conversation about the elections.
Good day. My name is Terrell Alexandre, and I serve as the Deputy Supervisor of Elections in the St. Croix District.
Okay. I know we have the primary election, which is on August 1st. Can you tell us a little bit about any information that you have with regards to that upcoming election?
Yes,
primary.
We have the primary election, which is scheduled for Saturday, August 1st. That is the primary election is for the Democratic candidates to make sure that they make the requirements to move on to the general election ballot. We have early voting for the primary election, which is scheduled from July 20th to the 29th. On St. Croix and St. Thomas is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then on St. John begins July 23rd to the 29th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. On St. Croix, the location is the St. Croix Elections Office, and in St. Thomas, it is the St. Thomas Elections Office above a Banco Popular, and in St. John is in the Marketplace Suite 3. We are encouraging voters to take part in early voting, and we encourage you not to wait until the last minute to cast your ballot. Again, early voting at St. Croix and St. Thomas is July 20th to the 29th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. St. Croix office is located in the Sunny Shopping Center, former movie theater location, and St. Thomas is above our Banco Popular. And at St. John, it's July 23rd to the 29th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Since you started off by saying that early voting started on the 20th, do you have any stats just for that day? Because I'm assuming that you probably have that.
Yes, we do have stats for the July 20th, 2026. That was the first day of early voting. We had an amazing day. Territory-wide, we had 970 voters cast their ballots. The breakdown by islands would be St. Croix, 509, St. Thomas, 468, and St. John, 3 individuals. Again, 509 for St. Croix, 468, and 3 for St. John.
Now, I know the primary is happening on the same day as this broadcast, but we also would want to talk a little bit about the general election to some extent. And I would like to start off by just asking, as an individual who wants to vote, what do I need to do?
Well, the first step, if you want to vote, you have to be a registered voter. There's numerous ways that you can register to vote. One, you can visit any one of our offices On St. Thomas, we're located in Lockhart Gardens above Banco Popular, and St. John, we're located in the Marketplace, Suite 3. And at St. Croix, we're located in the Sunny Shopping Center, the former movie theater location. The process is very simple. You just walk into the office with your documents that you require to provide us. We need either your U.S. birth certificate, a U.S. passport. If you're naturalized, your naturalized certificate. We don't accept an expired passport, and any one of those documents cannot be copied. Let's say you don't want to come into the office, you can visit our website, vivote.gov/registration, to complete the registration online. Since we're in the primary election, registration ended on July 2nd. We have to close voter registration 30 days before any election, and then it opens back up 5 days after any election. So registration will be open back up for the general election from August 6th until October 4th, where you'll be able to register to vote to take part in the general election. But you have to be, the first step is to register to vote. Again, the documents you need is either your U.S. birth certificate, U.S. passport, or a naturalization certificate. You provide any one of those documents, and we don't accept copies of any one of those documents, and the passport cannot be expired.
I know the last election, we did an exit poll, and it was quite promising in terms of people having access, people having the ability to seek assistance in voting. Can you expand a little bit on that in terms of what you've seen happening, and then since you've just had the early voting?
You can rephrase your question. I want to make sure I understand it clearly.
I was saying that we had an exit poll during the last election, and the information we got from the people that we polled was very promising in terms of how the election was conducted, access, if you needed help with voting and so forth. And just so folks know, people with disabilities or anybody that has any kind of issues where you can't vote for yourself, you could actually bring somebody to help you. I'm saying that correctly, right?
Correct. Yes.
Except if they're a union person or the person that employs you.
You could bring anyone.
Right.
Once you feel comfortable in bringing someone who could assist you to vote, you can bring anyone.
Right.
There is some paperwork required to complete that process, but that person can only assist one voter in the election. So, for example, if you have parents, you will only be able to assist one parent. Somebody else will have to assist the other parent. That's one step in the voting process with individuals with disability. And even if you don't have a disability, anyone can assist a next voter, but it has to be one person per election. Also, our machines are capable to assist any voter. The Express Vote machine, it has the braille on it, and you could put in a headset, and the machine will read everything that's on the screen to you, and you could use the keypad on the side of the screen to make your selections. And in the DS200, you plug in a headphones to hear when you scan your ballot, and the DS200 is the tabulator. That's where the votes are counted. It will tell you any errors or what's happening with your ballot. Once you meet the requirements, the machine will just accept your ballot as is. If you undervoted or overvoted in any contest, which is your right to do, you may want to undervote in a contest. Specifically, for example, let's say you want to vote for only 2 candidates in the Senate race, you can, but the machine will just prompt you and let you know that you're undervoting. But it is your choice, and if you want to cast your ballot, you could hit cast. If not, you could hit return, and then you could go and make your selection. But at the end of the day, it's your choice, and this can be completed on the Express Vote machines. We do a very good job of thinking of voters when we're implementing processes, selecting locations. For example, we price to use the St. Croix Educational Complex Gymnasium, but the issue with the Educational Complex Gymnasium is the walking distance. You have to walk from your vehicle to get to the gymnasium. So one switch we made was we started to utilize the St. Joseph Hospitality Lounge. That worked well for us during early voting, and in the 2024 general election. So that's a switch we make. We always try to keep the voters in mind to make the process easier for the voters, because without the voters, we would not have an election, and we have to ensure that we are meeting the voters' need each election.
Have you had complaints with regards to providing those access points?
Yes, and that's why sometimes we have to look at what we're doing. we typically do use public buildings because public buildings are free and we don't have to pay a cost for it. But and we did get complaints about the educational complex. It's so funny. I saw an email about it the other day when I was going through when some voters submitted a complaint about the walking distance at the educational complex back in the 2022 election cycle. So then in 2024, we made the change to utilize the St. Joseph Hospitality Lounge, and that worked out well. St. Joseph, and then at Central High School, Modular Gymnasium, that worked well for us. DC Canigata works well, and then we are in Fredericksburg, we have the Claro Marco School. So we always try to keep the voters in mind when searching for locations.
I'm happy that you said that. And just to add that as a voter, you have a right to vote however you want, wherever you want, and you're supposed to get access to the machines, access
Correct.
to information. And if you don't get that access, you can complain about
Correct.
it. You can
Correct.
complain to the election system, to the Board of Elections. You could complain to the AG's office. You could complain to us because that's one of the things that we do at the Disability Rights Center.
And you could do that anonymously. You could come in person. You could submit an email. We always like documentation, so then if we have to investigate a matter, that we could have key documentation to see what we have to be investigating. So always look for that documentation. And then also you have to keep in mind, and it is the next, if you're someone with a disability, you don't have a disability, you could also request an absentee ballot. You don't have to actually come into the office to do that process. You could request that from our website, veryvote.gov/absentee. And then we could put the ballot in the mail if you request it email, or somebody can pick it up to your office. For the primary election, July 18th was the last day to request any ballot that was going to be mailed, whether it was on island or off island. So up until August 1st at 5 p.m., you can only request a ballot that will be email or a ballot that you pick up from the office. So there are numerous ways a voter can cast a ballot. You don't have to be compelled to going to a voting center to vote. You do have options. You could always reach out to our offices, and St. Thomas, the phone number is 774-3107, and at St. Croix, it's 773-1021. Again, the number at St. Croix is 340-773-1021, and at St. Thomas is 340-774-3107. You can always reach out to our offices, and we could provide further assistance to you.
Question: can you vote at any polling station, or you have to?
Yes, that's a great question. So in 2022, well, we actually started the process in 2020, and we apologize to our voters because when we implemented it, the implementation was very, very wrong. We thought we knew what we were doing, but then we were trying to build it based on the equipment that we had. So then we had to invest funding, have a funding, and then we purchased a new e-poll book, which allowed us to allow voters to vote at any one of the voting centers. So let's say you work in Fredericksburg, but you live in Christiansted. If you're in Fredericksburg, you can vote at a voting center in Fredericksburg. If you're in the country, if you work in the country but live in the town, you could vote in the country. You're not tied to a specific precinct, and every single precinct contains the correct ballot for the voters to get. And it's the same process during early voting. It worked well during early voting. So we know it works well on election day.
Where are the polling stations on St. Croix? You have that information?
Yes, for the primary election, the polling locations on St. Croix are the DC Canigata Recreation Center, the St. Croix Central High Modular Gymnasium, and Claro Marco Elementary School in Fredericksburg. Since it's a small election, we use less voting centers, and you can visit any one of those voting centers to cast a ballot. And if you don't want to visit a voting center, just remind voters again, we have early voting from July 20th to the 29th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and that does include Saturdays and Sundays. And if not, you could request an absentee. You could request it via email and to pick it up from the office until August 1st at 5 p.m. The last to request a mail ballot was July 18th.
Okay. In terms of going back to some of the issues that you may have heard from voters, I know transportation sometimes is a big issue. We've always advocated for folks to get transportation. If you need transportation, you can contact DRCVI and we can see what we can do to help you if you have a disability. But besides those transportation, access, what other issues have you seen come up that has hindered somebody from voting?
That would primarily be the majority of the access issues we may have, but because we make the process so simple that we really don't. Like I mentioned earlier, there's numerous ways you could cast your ballot. You could request a ballot online, get the ballot online, and then email it back to us, so you don't physically have to come into the office. And even if you're not tech savvy, you could have somebody pick up the ballot for you, or we could mail a ballot to you, and then you could just mail it back to you. And when you mail it back to us, there is no cost of mailing the ballot back to the election system. But so we don't really have accessibility issues because there's numerous ways a voter can vote. And even with and prior to doing online voter registration, which we started January 2025, that would have been the only other accessibility. But now you could register to vote online, and that's open 24/7. So there is no reason why you cannot be registered to vote. And the process is simple. And then we're still finding ways of tweaking it. We have one more update where the voter will be able to complete their picture during the online process.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have the person's picture and signature and file and the rest of the information, we could then print the ID card in the office, and we could mail that ID card to the voter. So the voter would not even have to come to the office to complete the registration process. So we're thinking out of the box to improve the process to make sure that the process is easy and accessible for every single voter.
Thank you for that. Putting those questions out because I want people with disabilities to understand how easy it is to vote.
Very easy.
How easy it is to express your right
Yeah.
and choose the candidates that have your best interests at heart,
Yeah, it's quite simple. We try our best, and if you have a suggestion that we can implement to improve the process, you're welcome to share with us. Again, our phone number is 340-773-1021 at St. Croix, and in St. Thomas is 340-774-3107. And if you want to contact us via email, it's ESVI as in Election System of the Virgin Islands .info@vi.gov, and you can submit your suggestions or your complaints there just to give us feedback on the process.
You and I were speaking about some things earlier, and that involved the distinct difference between the election system and the Board of Elections. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because
Okay.
there's some people that confuse the two.
So, okay, let's clarify. So the election system of the Virgin Islands is the Board of Elections and the Office of the Supervisor combined. And then the Board of Elections is the policy maker, the policy arm of the election system. And then the Office of the Supervisor is the one who runs the day-to-day of the operation. So the chairman of the board is Mr. Raymond J. Williams, and then the supervisor of election is Caroline Fox. So think about it as the executive and legislative branch.
Mm-hmm.
The Board of Election is the legislative branch of the election system, and then the Office of the Supervisor is the executive branch of the election system. So if you want to look at it that way, because the board is the one who's going to promulgate rules, conduct hearings for election matters, and then the Supervisor of Election runs the day-to-day office with our amazing team members. We're a small staff of individuals that is tasked with doing a Herculean job, but we do it very well, and we're very excited about completing those tasks.
That's good to hear, but can you go in a little further? Because sometimes you go to vote and you see people out there counting or people moving folks around. What's the distinct difference between somebody who is on the board and somebody who is actually in the day-to-day operations of the election?
Okay, great. So the board, again, is the policy-making ones. They're more there for setting policies, testing of the machines, conducting hearings. The supervisor of elections, we run the day-to-day office. Both arms conduct voter registration. The board will do voter registration outside of the office, and then the office staff will do voter registration inside of the office. And the supervisor of elections conduct the campaign finances, voter registration, absentee. The board would count the absentee. And then we hired the office of supervisor conducts the election because our law was changed towards the end of 2024. So we conduct the election. So we train the election officials, and the election officials are the poll workers who work at the voting center. So we do hire a staff of individuals to come out to work to assist the voting process and then we train them, and then we compute the results, and then we submit back the results to the Board of Elections. So if in case there is an issue with the results, you can contact the Board of Elections, and then the Board of Elections will conduct a hearing to determine if there was any issue prior to taking to the situation to court.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because the event that we have scheduled for August 12th and 13th, St. Croix and St. Thomas, we had to go to the Board of Elections to have that.
Correct.
Because they would do the external registration.
Yes, because that would be outside
it.
of the office registration and machine demonstration. So the board will be there conducting those events. And lucky for you guys, you're holding the event in the Sunny Shopping Center.
Right.
So voters would have access to the office. So then if they do a registration outside of the office, they can come into the office and get their voter ID right away to complete the process.
What for you would constitute a good day for the election system?
Just a voter being able to cast a ballot free of any issues. So yesterday we had a very great day. We had 509 voters who actually did that in the St. Croix district, and 468 in the St. Thomas. In the St. Thomas, 268 and St. Thomas, and then 3 and St. John. So that was actually a good day. Just a voter being able to cast their ballot without any issue. That I consider that a good day.
I know we've been talking a little bit more on the preliminary or those elections for the Democratic candidates. Can you expand a little bit more when we get into the general election? Some of the things that voters need to be aware of in terms of some of the dates, if you have that, and some of the requirements that they may need, or the fact that they can still register to vote.
Correct. So the first step, if you want to take part in the voter registration process, I mean, in the 2026 general election, first you have to make sure that you are registered to vote. You could contact our offices. St. Croix is against 340-773-1021. St. Thomas is 340-774-3107 to find out your status, or if you could even visit our website via vote.gov, and you could look up your voter registration status. That will be the first step in the registration process. Registration opens back after the primary on August 6th, and it ends on October 4th. October 4th is a Sunday, and the office will be open on that Sunday. I think will be open from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And then you could still, again, do the voter registration online via vote.gov/registration. That process will be open until October 2nd at 5 p.m. And then anything else after October 2nd for the online voter registration, you'll have to come into the office to complete the process. After we complete registration, we move directly into early voting. Early voting is scheduled to begin less than 2 weeks after we close registration. It's supposed to begin on a Friday, October 16th, on St. Croix and St. Thomas, and that runs from October 16th to the 31st, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And for St. John, it'll be a reduced number of days. I don't think we have settled on the correct number of days for St. John, but the hours on St. John will be 9 to 4. But it will end, the one for St. John will end on the 31st, like St. Croix and St. Thomas. So voters are encouraged to first to learn their status. And then we have the general election, which is scheduled for Tuesday, November 3rd. Voting centers will open at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I could specifically speak on the district of St. Croix. The voting centers on St. Croix from East going to Frederiksted. We have DC Canigata Recreation Center, St. Dunstan's Episcopal Church Auditorium, School Auditorium, St. Croix Central High Modular Gymnasium, St. Joseph Church Hospitality Lounge, and the Claro Marco School. Elementary school in Frederiksted. So we'll have 5 voting centers open up. During early voting, the locations will be at our offices. From October 16th to the 31st on St. Croix and St. Thomas, we're located in the Sunny Shopping Center, former movie theater location, and in St. Thomas is above Lacquer Gardens.
So here you have it. You are encouraged to vote early. That's what I'm hearing from you, right?
Yes, but we love to promote early voting, help us get our numbers up there. It's quick and it's easy. The average person, they take no more than 10 minutes. So I'm real proud of the job the staff did on the first day. For example, we had 47 individuals being checked in within the first 17 minutes of early voting.
That's amazing.
Yes, that's how quick the process is. And I believe by 9:30, those 47 voters were all out of the office by 9:30 in the St. Croix district. So kudos to the staff, job well done. I was very excited about it, and then we ended the day with 509 voters.
Well, thank you,
And-
Terrell. I could call you that because I've known you for so long. Thank you for coming by. I appreciate the time. I know you have an event September the 19th.
Yes.
And that's at your Sunny Isle location?
Yes, it's be on all three islands.
Okay, so you have it on St. Thomas as well. Is it the same day?
Yeah, it'll
Okay.
all be on the same day, September 19th, week, the 2026 Elections Expo. That ties in with the National Voter Registration Day. That's our last effort to try and encourage voter registration before the 2026 general election. You have to be registered to vote in order to take part in the 2026 general election. So once you're registered, you are registered to vote. So we thank you for inviting us to your show, and we look forward to coming out to your show. And again, if anybody has any concerns, you can also reach out to our offices at 340-773-1021 St. Croix, and the St. Thomas is 340-774-3107, and email is esvi.info@vi.gov, and our website is vivote.gov. So thank you very much, and we wish you well on the work you do for our community.
Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.